climbed up and steady climbed up, and then look at you now, man. It's a blessing. I wanted to ask you, what is the most significant risk you've taken in your career, and how did you manage it?
It's the most significant risk.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Like you just
So
got
I would
laid out.
say, I would say this. I would say, don't be afraid to climb up a mountain that you've never climbed before. And it's like, because, a lot of times you look at it and you go, and literally like growing up, no one in my life had jobs like I had. So I had no real role model like that. I had great people. My dad was a great man. I had great brothers and sisters and uncles, but nobody had the type of job that I've had. And so I had to kind of go over mountains, if you will, and find my path. And I would have never thought that I was just going to be a teacher coach. To become a CEO of a company or own a California sports brand, it just wasn't in my radar. So you have to be, the risk is you can't be scared of going over a hill and seeing something you've never seen before. And I've had some really good role models in my life that have believed in me, kind of like, you were talking about with Olden believing in you. And I had some bosses that were just like, you need to be in management. I remember I was really good at sales. I could just control my own destiny. I made a lot of money in sales, and they were like, "Oh, we want you in management." And I'm like, "Oh man, I know that's less money in the short run, maybe more money in the long run. It's being the boss, if you will." And now you got the coach. You're the head coach trying to get your team together, and it's like, but that's a risk, if you will. So to me, always a new challenge is a risk, if that makes any sense. And literally, like I would never have thought about being an entrepreneur. Like everybody's like, "Oh, is this something you planned your whole life?" Not at all, not at all. And I would never have thought I would own a sports brand in California and have all kinds of celebrity ambassadors and partners. That would never have hit my radar. So to me, it was about taking risk and but having calculated risk. So like every time I climbed or left, I had somebody early in my career. I asked him. I said, "Does it look bad if I switch from company to company and climb up the hill?" He says, "As long as you keep moving up, if you need to move to another company," he goes, "nobody can fault you for that." And that's kind of a risk because you're happy at one spot and maybe you're doing okay, and you see another job over here, you don't know what you're walking into. And most of the time I walked into a good situation. A few times I walked into a situation where I was like, this is not good. I need to get out of here. And it's going to last 6 months. I got to find the next opportunity. Like when I left LA Gear, I was ready to get on and I went to Starter. I don't even hardly talk about Starter, but I went there and the situation that I thought I was going in was not what it was supposed to be or what it was. And I was like, wow, I need to get out of here. I knew right away, like literally in the first 6 weeks, I'm like, oh boy, I made a mistake. And so you can't really say it's a mistake. You have to say, how do I move off of this to the next one? And then that got me working with Nike. And I probably wouldn't have worked for Nike if I hadn't made that move, if you will. It kind of forced me to think about going to Nike. And they're like, well, you need to move to Seattle from San Diego. And so that's a risk. Every time you take a challenge, it's a risk. I've been fortunate enough that most of them have been calculated risk and they turned out. Some have not. Like when I took a risk to become a CEO, I had a phenomenal job at Quicksilver and Roxy. And my Converse partners asked me to be CEO of Pony. And it wasn't the best situation. And I knew it wasn't, but I did it for personal reasons because I was taking care of my son at the time. And it was back in San Diego. And I did it for the right reasons. And it was a risk because I went from a much bigger $1 billion company down to a smaller company. And it turned out it wasn't a great fit all the way around. And so sometimes it doesn't work out, but you have to look at what does that lead to by becoming a CEO and also kind of doing the whole experience. It made me think about starting to start my own brand, which I would have never thought about that before. So I evolved into being an entrepreneur. And because when you have partners, even if you're a 1% owner, 5% owner, you still have bosses you have to report to. And, so when you start your own company, yeah, you still have bosses. You have your partner, you have your investors or whatever you have. So you're always reporting to someone on how you're doing. And what you want to do is get into a role that you can maybe have a bigger say so, bigger voice. And but every time you make a move, to be honest with you, is a risk. but you do it because you just want to keep climbing the mountain. And so I looked at I climbed in the mountain the first time, and now as an entrepreneur I'm climbing the backside of the mountain, and that's a risk. It's a harder path, if you will, but it's I want to do it, and so that's why I'm in it. And sometimes, some days you're like, what did I get myself into? But most of the time it's like, you know what, this is a heck of a challenge, and God has blessed me with a lot of abilities and great people in my life and great health. And why not? And every day, one step at a time leads to the next success story.
Amen. Amen.
That was a good question, Shotty. Oh, look at you.
That was a great question, actually.
I appreciate the answer, man. That was that hit me really hard. Because of the chapter I'm in my